Ladies and gentlemen, I'm calling this meeting of the City Council to order. Please that pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, as well as Mayor Curtatoni's declaration of emergency on March 15, 2020. This meeting of the City Council will be conducted via remote participation. We will post an audio recording, audio-video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of these proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting on the City Council website and the local cable access channels. Now please rise for the prayer and pledge of allegiance.
Mr. President, let's begin this meeting with a prayer. God grant this City Council the serenity to accept the things that cannot be changed, the courage to change the things that can be changed, and the wisdom to know the difference. And now let's join in a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated, and Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
This is roll call. Councilor Klingon.
Present.
Councilor Mba.
Present.
Councilor White.
Here.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Present.
Councilor Strezzo.
Present.
Councilor Niedergang.
Here.
Councilor Davis.
Here.
Councilor Scott.
Present.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Here.
Councilor Rossetti.
Present.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yeah.
Mr. President, all 11 city councilors are present. We have a quorum.
Do we have any moments of silence? Councilor White.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a moment of silence for Antonio Grossi of 87 Governor Winthrop Road here in Somerville. He was the beloved husband, married 49 years to Ilda Grossi. He was born in Villago, Italy, and he immigrated to this country in 1963, and he was employed at the Omni Parker House in Boston, working for 40 years in the banquet and function rooms as a banquet waiter. He leaves his son, Jesse. In addition to his wife, he leaves his son, Jesse, and his daughter, Deborah. And, you know, he was well known on Governor Winthrop Road, and I've known the family for many, many years, and I wish to offer them their condolences, and may he rest in peace.
On that, Councilor Klingon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, thank you to Councilor White for doing the honors. I know that they had a much longer relationship than I and Mr. Grossi, but my recollection of Mr. Grossi was one of really fond memories. Just seeing him around the neighborhood, he was quite the walker. He had battled a long illness for quite some time and ultimately succumbed to that illness recently. But I just can't imagine the interesting life he must have led. 40 years. I've been in the hospitality industry myself, and he actually went to a special school over in Italy. In the hospitality school, and so 40 years at the Omni Parker. I can only imagine the stories he must have to tell, the famous faces and the high-level politicians, actors, the whole bit that he must have met through his time there. And his wife is left behind. She actually was the owner of she owns a salon up at the corner of Broadway and Main Street, which is now she has retired. So. Sadly, she'll be just in her retirement with her extended family there on Governor Winthrop, including her son Jesse, who is a really, really amazing young man. He works for Chronicle, and he's done numerous stories about folks in the community as necessary. Whether it be folks in the elderly community or about Deanna Kremen. So, Mr. Grossi will be missed by his family. I will miss seeing him around. He was a very, very sweet man, and I just wanted to add on. I want to sign on and add on to that, as I think it's well deserved. He's been a grateful resident for quite some time. So
Do we have any further moments of silence? Hearing none, please rise for a moment of silence. Please be seated. All right, so before we get started, we have a lot of important items on the agenda today. And just to give people an idea of how I'd like to take the items up, we'll take the grant of location up first, and then we're going to take all financial items, all the finance reports, as well as requests and appropriations related to the budget. And then we'll return to the regular order of business unless anyone had another item they wanted to take out of order. Any discussion on this? Hearing no discussion, Mr. Clerk, please read the next item. Mr. Clerk, you there?
Mr. President, item number 3 is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of June 11th.
This item is laid on the table for approval.
Item number 4 is a public hearing, the grant location submitted by TC Systems to install 78 feet of conduit in Washington Street from a pole at the corner of Magnus Ave to a proposed handhole across the street in the sidewalk in front of Perry Park, then to another adjacent pole just a couple of feet away.
I now declare this public hearing open. If there's anyone here to speak on the item, you can please use the green hand signal on your computer. I'll give you a moment to make sure, and there we go, Mr. Adam Heller. You're self-muted, sir. Can you unmute yourself?
All right, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thank you very much for having us over this video conference. I appreciate it. My name is Adam Heller. I'm here to speak on behalf of TC Systems. I'm from Sienna Engineering Group. And as described, this is a petition to install about 78 feet of PVC conduit between 2 existing utility poles at the intersection of Magnus Avenue and Washington Street. This construction is expected to take between 2 and 3 days. And we had some comments from the planning board about making sure that the contractor takes the utmost care to avoid damaging any trees. And of course, the road and sidewalk will be repaired to its original condition upon completion of construction. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Is there anyone else in the audience just to speak on this item? Please use the green hand signal. All right, seeing no further people speaking on this item, I'm going to keep the public hearing open for now and open it up to the City Council. I believe Councilor Scott, you had an issue?
Thank you for the recognition, Mr. President. Mainly a concern, that location, I understand what they're trying to get at there, but that location in particular right across from Perry Park has some ADA sidewalk crossings. So those, the way it's drawn on the diagram right now would extend the trench directly through the engineered crossing ramp that we have down off the sidewalk at the corner of Magnus. So it doesn't seem like the best idea to trench through because it's not a straightforward sidewalk panel restoration the way they've got on their plans there. I guess through you, Mr. President, I'd have a question for the engineering team about the possibility for routing that a different way so that we don't go over those fairly expensive and difficult to engineer sections.
Mr. Heller, can you address that?
Absolutely. So we can certainly take another look at how to route it in order to avoid that ramp, like you said. we can always bring it back to the drawing board and figure it out and represent a new plan. However, there have been other, instances where we've done similar construction and repaired it in kind. So of course we can take that into consideration as well. But if the preferred, solution is to redesign and try to get around that ramp, we can certainly do that.
I'd appreciate it if you would contact the engineering department in particular that has to contract out services to make sure those ramps are designed and implemented correctly.
Sure.
We have too many that aren't in compliance, and it costs about 10 grand a pop to get them done right. So I would appreciate it if you could take another look at that for our next meeting. Mr. President, this public hearing would be held open until the next meeting of the City Council.
Yeah, so basically, we could refer this to committee and keep the public hearing open until August. I do know that they wanted to start construction July, August timeframe. So up to the ward councilor, whether you want us to move forward or not, we can put it in committee.
I'm happy to leave it on the table, Mr. President. I just asked for follow-up from the representative here so that we can get this worked out with engineering before issuing a provisional permit.
Okay, so you want to lay it on the table and get the answer tonight?
Mr. President, I don't believe this item would be up for approval tonight anyway, correct?
There was people were interested in approving this, but again, this is the ward councilor, so if you did not want it approved tonight, we can lay it on the table.
I'd appreciate having it laid on the table, and if we can get it worked out with engineering, they can issue a provisional permit, and then we can make it official when the City Council reconvenes.
Okay, very good. Any further discussion from the council? Hearing no discussion, this item will be laid on the table and the public hearing will remain open until August 27th.
Mr. President,
Yes.
it may be wise to close the public hearing if there is to be a provisional approval between now and that meeting.
Do you have any objections, Councilor Scott?
No objections to closing the public hearing, sir.
Okay, very good. I declare the public hearing closed and this item will be laid on the table. Councilor Scott moves to take items number 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 23, 24, and 25 out of order for consideration. Any objections? Hearing none, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll to take these items out of order.
Mr. President, this would be a roll call vote on taking out of order those committee reports and then the subsequent financial items that will flow that are related to the FY21 budget. So on taking all financial items out of order, Councilor Klinging.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen. Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, 11 councilors have voted in favor. Those items are now eligible to be taken out of order.
All right, Councilor Scott, you have the floor for items 14 through 20, all committee reports.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. Items number 14 through 20 are the committee reports of the Finance Committee meetings that happened on 6/29, July 1, 2, 6, 7, 8, and 9. I'm not going to belabor the contents of them because for a few reasons. One of which is that it is absolutely evident from the engagement of every member of the City Council at our final committee, the whole meeting on July 9th, that the action had been followed quite closely, and also that it had been followed quite closely by the public. Aside from our absolutely unprecedented public hearing, which happened early in the process, the number of people that actually tuned in, it was nearly 1,400 attendees watched the meetings of the Finance Committee over the course of this budget season. It was absolutely unprecedented in terms of the amount of public attention on it. And it was also unprecedented in another way in that this was the first year that we undertook to pursue the vast majority of the departmental reviews as a committee rather than as a committee as a whole. I just want to take a moment and say thank you to members of the committee who devoted an incredible amount of time and did their homework as always, but also to our colleagues who entrusted us with the responsibility, and the result was incredibly efficient. The 2016 budget season, I actually went back and took a look. Councilor Rossetti at the close of that budget season remarked on how grueling it had been. And that was a 7-day process with 225 person hours of the City Council alone, not counting staff or city personnel or clerks. In 2017, it was 8 days and 315 person hours. 2018, it was 12 days and 524 hours of City Council time. This year, we got it done in 11 days and only 301 hours, which is just, I think, an incredible amount of efficiency. I'm very glad that we were able to get this done in a tight circumstance with, I would say, more rigor than any budget season I've had the privilege to be a part of. So I'm very grateful for all the hours that got put in behind the scenes and in committee to get this done. And I just could not be more proud of the work of this council over the course of the budget. So the reports of each evening encapsulate the departmental reviews that were undertaken and any motions for cuts that were made and laid on the table, or resolutions with regard to those that were made and laid on the table. The culminating report is from the 9th of July, where all of those motions for cuts or resolutions were taken off the table and discussed by the entire City Council as a committee of the whole. And in the end, action was not taken on the item before us of the city budget because in anticipation of the remaining items that we have here in terms of a resubmission of a revised budget. I'll talk about the revised budget when it's before us. But in the meantime, I would like to move for acceptance of these committee reports, which contain no action that we would need a roll call vote on. And subsequent to that, I would ask to move to discharge some 17 items out of committee so that we can act on them tonight.
All right, Councilor Scott moves to waive the readings of items number 14 through 20 and accept them as submitted. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, please call the roll, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, should I roll into this vote the discharge of those 17 items?
Isn't that coming up after item 23?
Yes, you're correct. You are correct. Very good. So this is actually on item number 3, which was the approval of the minutes and the approval of the committee reports described by Chair Scott. On those items, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted to approve the minutes and the committee reports that were just presented.
Okay, so now we're going to take up item 23, which is the budget, and then the discharge items, correct?
That's correct.
All right, please read item number 23.
Item number 23 is the request of the mayor requesting the appropriation of $246,457,214 to fund the fiscal year 2021 general fund operating budget.
Councilor Scott.
All right, thank you, sir. This item is the revised budget that has been presented to us. It is marginally smaller than the initial budget that was proposed. However, the vast majority of the numbers escaping me right now, of the nearly $1 million in cuts that this city council undertook on it were subsequently reinvested in a number of positions. Either fully funding positions that had set vacant, restoring the funding, for example, to the Arts Council and their programming budget, or creating more investment in community services. So this is the revised budget. I have had an opportunity to review the numbers. They appear to be largely in order, but I would defer to somebody from the administration who would like to speak on the presentation of the memo that was delivered to us earlier today.
Is there anyone from the administration who wanted to speak on this?
Mr. Chair, this is, Mr. President, excuse me, this is Director Connor. We're happy to take any questions on the memo that was sent earlier this morning, but we do not have a presentation for the council this evening.
All right, any discussion on item 23?
Mr. Chair, Mr. President,
Let's see, I got Councilor Rossetti and then Councilor Needigang.
Mr. President, at some point, I don't know if this would be the time, but I had asked a question of Director Kress for Health and Human Services. I received the response to my question on the professional and technical line today, and I have some questions on it. So before I vote the final budget, I need to address those questions with the director.
All right, well, let's do that right now. Is Mr. Kress in the audience? I do not see attendees. Let's see.
Mr. Chairman, I can speak for Director Kress. This is Mike Mastrobuoni, Budget Manager.
All right.
I spent some time speaking with Mr. Kress today, and I think I understand the information.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Rossetti, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. I did speak with Mr. Mastrobuoni and asked him to have Mr. Kress here, but if that's not the case, my question is the following. I had questioned when the director was first before us, the professional and technical line. I had asked him what was the balance on hand, and he responded that it was $88,000 not yet spent. So following that meeting, as I was reviewing numbers, as what is posted on the website by yourself, Mr. Mastrobuoni, with the assistance of Ed Bean, of course, it shows a balance of $127,503.26, which didn't match up to the $88,000. So I asked for a definement of how and what was spent in professional and technical, which is now under the documents section of that website for everyone to see, and it zeroes out. But it doesn't make sense to me at all, because to my math, what's incorporated in the document we received today, which shows a zero on professional and technical, incorporates COVID monies that were transferred out. But we all know that the COVID monies that every department offered up were then transferred back into departments. And it's still showing on the report that he sent me today, sent all of us today, the COVID monies that were taken out. So to my math, the professional and technical line this year has $127,503. If you want to add into that the $92,600 of COVID monies that were taken out of that line, that suggests a balance of greater than $200,000. When I looked back at fiscal year 18, there was a balance of $75,000. When I looked back at fiscal year 19, there was a balance of only $40,000, but there was a lot of monies transferred out. The math doesn't add up to me on this at all, and it makes me very skeptical. So I'm in a position now that I want to do some more cutting, which I did let Mr. Mastroboni know earlier today when I contacted him. I will allow Mr. Mastroboni to respond before I make that motion, Mr. President.
All right, Mr. Mastroboni, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I think there's a couple points there that were brought up. I think with respect to the most recent year-to-date budget report, in terms of the professional and technical services line, I would say that I agree with the councilor at large. There's approximately $127,000 unspent for fiscal 20. That is true. It's also true that when Director Kress shared with this council his projection of professional technical services for fiscal 20, that he included that COVID-19 spending. So effectively the way that worked was that in the initial phase of COVID-19 expenditures, we were putting everything onto the general fund in, as you know, these special items accounts. So certainly those, as we got additional guidance from the Commonwealth, it's correct that those monies were then transferred out into sort of like a deficit holding tank, special fund. And I believe that the reason that Director Kress included those expenditures in his report for fiscal 20 professional and technical services is because we spent that money on the general fund, and those expenditures were then pulled off. So he wasn't able to spend that money because we were using it on COVID-19 expenditures, and that's to the tune of multiple. Looks like multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars as I'm looking. Something like $100,000.
92.6.
92. Thank you. The only so the other piece I wanted to mention, I spent some time talking to Director Kress this afternoon about how his fiscal 20 professional technical services expenditures went, and he outlined to me a couple important points that I want to share with the council. I'll try and be brief. As always, feel free to follow up with any questions. By his numbers, and I received this after my conversation with Councilor Rossetti, so I actually just put this together, and it's on the drive now, but it's not something that I would have been able to do ahead of time. Director Kress outlines approximately $87,000 of programs that he planned on doing with his professional technical services, but were not able to be done because of COVID. Some big examples of those are mental health consultants for students, which we were not able to do because the school was closed, citywide equity trainings in the spring that we couldn't do, and then a rodent study that was planned for the spring that was canceled due to coronavirus. So there was approximately, by his estimation, $87,000 of funds that we could not expend because of COVID. And then on top of that, there was about $35,800 funds that were unspent due to shortened programmed or reduced services due to COVID. So adding those together is something like $120,000. There were additional costs incurred because of COVID. We're thinking graphics, printing here, but that was $5,000. So I think there was, much like with all departments, Health and Human Services spending this year was a little bit out of the realm of ordinary. Because the schools were closed, because City Hall was closed. So there were many expenditures that Director Kress was not able to do. And then the last, I think, important piece to note is, for fiscal 21, we've proposed a $60,000 reduction in professional technical services. What we've tried to do, what Doug and his team have tried to do, is to right-size that budget based on what we now know can and cannot go on in the summer and the fall. So I think those are some like 3 or 4 important points in this discussion. I would argue that all of that $571,000 proposed for fiscal 21 in professional technical services for Health and Human Services is critical, and it's an important need, but I'm happy to answer any questions on anything I just brought up.
If I may respond, Mr. President, through you to Mr. Mastroboni. Why the hell didn't the memo say that? The memo showed it as a zero balance. What you just represented is totally different than the memo that I received today. So, I questioned the out-of-state travel when this department was before us. And I was given a response that it was important to do that out-of-state travel. And I gave him a heads up. I was strongly making a cut there. And then lo and behold, we received a memo that he misspoke, and the out-of-state travel should not have been budgeted for. So he accepted that I was going to pull that money back out. This professional and technical line, why I wasn't told 127, but I was told 88 when he was first before us, I still can't wrap my head around. So at this time, Mr. President, I move to cut from line 530000, professional and technical services of Health and Human Resources, $50,000. And that could have hired somebody. Chairman Scott, I apologize. Had I known this earlier, we could have put that in for another hire that's still lacking. But that is my motion, Mr. President.
All right, Councilor Rossetti moves to cut $50,000 from line item 53000. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion. Oh, did I hear someone?
Mr. President. Thank you. I share my colleague's concern. I definitely like to get the numbers right, and I definitely don't like the feeling when they're not adding up. In this particular setting, the total number for the budget this year has knock-on effects later in terms of the levy and our ability to have resources that we can direct later. I might, while I certainly any motion is in order, my approach in this case might be to follow up aggressively with the administration on the possibility to transfer that money, to have the administration bring back an appropriation or a transfer order from that line to a salaries line that is still gone unfunded. There are several positions that this council did move and urge the administration to fund. Just off the top of my head, I can think of the Deputy Director of Libraries for $43,500, a Treasury position that has been unstaffed and will continue to be unstaffed for an extensive amount of time. That's only $24,300. So these kind of monies can make a big difference. I might, instead of supporting the cut tonight, instead support some aggressive action to get that money transferred out of this line into one of the salaries lines, just as a consideration for my colleague.
Councilor Ewan Campbell has a question, but do you have a response to that, Councilor Rossetti?
I have no objection. I just want to make the cut. Which position, then we would have to negotiate with the administration, and that's not going to happen tonight on that. So if we leave the money in there, we're at the whim of hoping they're going to come back to us later with an amendment. I would rather just cut it tonight.
Okay, so the cut remains on the table. Councilor Ewan Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, thank you very much, Councilor Rossetti, for this. I just want to make sure I understand. This is a proposed $50,000 cut to Health and Human Services, professional and technical. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. President, if I may respond, yes. And honestly, we know he can transfer within his own lines as he does and other department heads do, but I'm picking that particular line to make that cut based on the history of math that I wasn't adding up for me.
Okay, through the President, thank you very much. I will not be supporting the cut. I certainly understand the logic. I appreciate this, but I'm not going to support further cuts to Health and Human Services during the pandemic.
All right, Councilor White.
Thank you, Mr. President. Like Councilor Ewan Campbell, I'm not going to be voting for this proposed cut. I mean, part of me says that, you try to look at back years and then then make a decision about, well, we should cut it because it wasn't used in prior years or whatever. But what I do is I look at what are the programs the department head spoke about that the department head wants to implement. And they've also already taken a reduction. And in these times, I think this is the a very important department, and especially with the things that Mr. Mastroboni mentioned about what Mr. Kress wants that department to move forward on next year. So those are very important and convincing reasons for me to vote in opposition to the cut. Thank you.
We have Councilor Niedergang and Barr, and then Mr. Mastroboni would like to comment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm basically in agreement with Councilors White and Ewan-Campen, and I will not be voting for this cut, but I do appreciate Councilor Rossetti's scrutiny of the budget and all the work that she and other members of the Finance Committee have put in. But I'm hesitant to cut Health and Human Services with the COVID epidemic and the need that exists for that department. Thank you.
Councilor Barr.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And same, echo the sentiment of Councilor Niedergang, White, Ewan-Campen. And I also want to appreciate Councilor Rossetti for proposing the cut, but based on, what Mr. Mastroboni has just mentioned about the funding that is needed in this department, I will not be supporting this cut.
All right, Councilor Ballantyne, and then I'll have Mr. Mastroboni will have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't have anything new to add, but to what my colleagues have already said, but I will not be supporting this cut. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mastroboni is all set. Does anyone else have any comment? If no one else has a comment, I'll just comment and say that I will be supporting this cut because I think accountability is important. $50,000 I don't think is going to kill us during a pandemic, and considering all the things we've cut around public health and safety already, just kind of surprising that this $50,000 cut on money that is not being spent is such a big deal. But if there's no other discussion, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. President, there's a roll on cutting $50,000 from the Health and Human Services Department's Professional and Technical Services account. On that item, Councilor Klingon.
No.
Councilor Mba.
No.
Councilor White.
No.
Councilor Ballantyne.
No.
Councilor Strezzo.
No.
Councilor Niedergang.
No.
Councilor Davis.
No.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
No.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, 3 councils have voted in favor, 8 are. That motion has not been approved.
All right, so now we return back to the item at hand, which is the overall budget. Councilor Niedergang, you had a comment?
Thanks, Mr. President. It's a general comment and not specific about budget items, so I'll wait if others have specific cuts they want to propose or specific questions about the budget.
Are there any other motions before us tonight on this item? Going once, going twice. With no more motions before us, you have the floor again, Councilor Niedergang.
Thank you, Mr. President. I did want to again thank Chairman Scott and the Finance Committee for the tremendous amount of work and the long hours they put in. And I also want to appreciate the administration, particularly Ms. Weber, Ms. Connor, and Mr. Mastroboni. I know that we get frustrated at times and that sometimes the information that we seek doesn't come when we would like it or in the form that we would like it. But overall, I believe they have provided us with detailed and clear information, responded to a tremendous number of requests, coordinated department heads getting that information to us. For example, the police department, I think the response to the information was something like a dozen pages long. So I very much appreciate the respect that they have shown us, the information that they have provided, And I think my biggest takeaway from this process, besides, as Councilor Scott described it, how well it went despite how unusual it was, and how late, through nobody's fault, how late we got started on it. This was a very challenging, difficult, and I think unprecedented year. The thing that I take away from this that strikes me as very different from when I first joined the Board of Aldermen 7 years ago was how collaborative and cooperative and respectful, in the best sense of the word, I have found the administration to be. I remember when I first came on the council, we'd make our cuts, we'd go through the budget, then we'd all submit our requests for, additional expenditures, for things that we passionately believed were important to be in the budget, and maybe one or two of those would be added on by the mayor, a month or two later. And that process always was incredibly frustrating to me, because I felt that the things that we felt were important, which often were not a whole lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, a tiny proportion of the budget, those things were virtually ignored. This year, I was shocked, to be honest, and pleased, incredibly pleased. The administration not only took seriously, but enacted most of the requests that we made for funds that were cut to be used for other purposes, for funds to be transferred from one line to another. And I feel, in my opinion, this has been by far the most collaborative and most positive budget process, despite all the rancor around the police budget. And I'm grateful, and I think it sets a new kind of floor and foundation for how the council and the mayor and the administration can work together on coming up with what's best for the city. Thank you.
We have Councilor Klingon and then Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to everybody, I just want to also, I think it would be remiss not to at least acknowledge the fact that under these circumstances, the amazing job that everybody has done, city staff included, Councilor Chairperson Scott, and then what I would call your psychic ability to understand that we were going to have this COVID thing on. What I'm saying is it worked out actually perfectly. I don't know that we could have gotten through this in time to have a 12-month budget had you not just happened to try this new system out with just the committee met. So it's kind of like one of those lucky things that happened. But with Chairman Scott's leadership, I think he put together a really aggressive schedule, and so I'm just really proud of the work that we were able to get done in the short amount of time, and not feel like we're losing anything or not doing our due diligence. So I want to thank everybody on the Finance Committee, staff, and everybody on this council. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilor Davis and Councilor White.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I echo everything Councilor Newdigang said. That was going to be the primary point that I was going to make, so I won't make it myself, other than to just repeat the gratitude to the administration for taking this different approach. This is, I think, I agree, this has been the best budget process that I've seen overall. I want to hit one specific point, and no surprise probably to folks, it's the one that I talked about the most last week, which is the fact that we will have coming into the city council a budget to do stuff. We have, as the memo Ms. Connor sent earlier, Director Connor sent earlier today, confirmed what she confirmed to us last week. We will have $250,000 to the professional technical services line item that will be used to drive the community process, specifically initially on a civilian review board commission process to put a real empowered civilian review process into place. And the council will be driving that. We'll be working hand in hand with the administration. And I want to specifically extend my gratitude to Director Connor for her work on that. She and I spent, I didn't count the hours, we spent a long time on the phone the last couple of weeks talking this through, figuring out how to make it work, how to make sure that everyone on both sides was comfortable with the proposal. there's certainly, there remains more that we don't know than what we do know in terms of how this will work. We're going to have to sort it out, and you know, that will begin with establishing a process to determine what specifically we will spend the money on as it relates to that civilian interview process and reimagining policing. You know, I had suggested that the path of least resistance seems to be the president's, you know, having the president sign off. So, Mr. President, that would be one proposal, but I plan to reach out to you directly to speak about that, and if others have thoughts or considerations of that. I'm not sure this tonight, excuse me, is the right venue for that, but perhaps you know, perhaps in conversation with the president to determine the right process for that. But it is historic, and it is important first and foremost because it will result in what I hope will be the best legislation in the nation to establish a civilian review process that will be independent, that will have authority, that will have power, that will have financing, that will have all the things that are needed. And that's the most important part of it. But very close behind that is that it will be an opportunity for this council to demonstrate that we can do legislative work. We can have a budget to do legislative work, and we can work together with the administration to advance the will of the people, the will of our constituent office. It's something that, for whatever reason, through, you know, no one's fault that I'm aware of specifically, hasn't happened in a long time, if ever. The city council has been years somewhat of an afterthought. Certainly, you know, when you go door knocking, there's a lot of folks who have to ask you what is an alderman and what does a city council do, and that is a product of our form of government, you know, how we are organized under the charter, but it's also a product of just the way the government in this city has operated for decades and generations, and the fact that we have been, you know, that we are where we are prior to today, as I said, I think is not because of a specific decision that anyone in government right now made, but just you know, historical precedent. So I'm really excited to be putting a stake in the ground and changing that precedent in some small way, specific to this project, and I look forward to working with Director Connor and with others in the administration to advance this initiative with the City Council as a lead, spearheading it, as the memo today said. So thank you to all of you, my colleagues, who supported that request, and I'm going to be asking for your help going forward here pretty quickly, even through the summer, to make sure that we get this right and have the right input from all different angles. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilor Davis, as always, I blame John Adams for our state issues, but he's not around, so I'll turn it over to the next eldest candidate, Councilor White, and then Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be very brief on this. I want to compliment Chairman Scott for the work that he did on this, because it was his first time, and also being thrust in the, you know, in the COVID-19 situation that we have, where you have to run meetings through a Zoom type of program instead of having folks live. And I also want to compliment the president and my colleagues for agreeing not to have everything as a committee of the whole. Up until this point, traditionally all members would want to have committees of the whole to review the entire budget. So instead of having 5 members, as we did now, questioning department heads and the finances, etc., you would have 11 people doing the same thing. So that would definitely make the process more grueling and also more time consuming, as Chair Scott mentioned, in the person hours that were spent in the past versus now. So all things considered, again, I think it was a very well run process, especially under the circumstances, and would compliment the president and Chair Scott for the work done. Thank you.
We have Councilor Ewan-Campen and Councilor Bott.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'll also try to be brief. I want to, through you, offer my enormous gratitude to the committee members who took this on. It was an incredibly challenging year to do this, and I cannot thank you enough for the work that you put into this. And I also want to echo my appreciation for the professionalism and the respect that the administration showed us, particularly Annie and Kushbu and Mike Mastroboni. Those are the folks that, that I worked with the most directly, and I'm sure that there were lots of other people behind the scenes doing similar work. So I just want to emphasize, in addition to all the points that Councilor Davis, Councilor Niedergang, Councilor White have made, this was one of the most challenging budget years for many reasons, particularly the pandemic. And I just want to reiterate the fact that we did not have layoffs. We were able to settle the paraprofessionals contract, and there were no huge across the board cuts. There was no austerity approach here. And I think that is something that we should not take for granted. And that is the result of a lot of hard work by folks in the administration, in our community, on the city council. So I'm very grateful for that. In particular, Councilor Davis brought up the fact that the city council has funding to oversee the process for civilian oversight. I'm incredibly excited to get to work on that. I'm incredibly excited that that is happening. And lastly, I also just want to reiterate what Councilor Niedergang said, that when we made sizable cuts in the department, I think it is easy to imagine a community, an administration that would have doubled down, refused to reallocate those funds, done everything in their power to resist. And I do not take for granted that that did not happen. That, within days we were presented with very meaningful reinvestments in critical positions. And I honestly believe that that is because the folks who work in the administration care about this issue and see the value in that approach. And so through the president, I want to thank you for that. And again, to my colleagues, thank you for all your hard work during this.
Councilor Barr.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief as well. I just want to thank Chairman Scott for his leadership, on this committee during this controversial So I just want to thank him for everything that he's done on this, and also thank the administration, for being so responsive, throughout the entire process. I mean, because initially I belonged to the school of thought that a bare bone, budget deserves a bare bone discussion, but there were much more, information that I discovered, because the devil is always in the details. But I'm super happy that we were able to go through this. So glad that the paraprofessionals were paid, like Councilor Campbell mentioned. So glad that there were no layoffs, because if you look at other communities, there were layoffs. So, I'm just grateful. It was a lot of thinking, a lot of challenges, but I'm glad we went through this. And also, just to add that, yes, Annie, Connor, and in Liaison Weber, beside the budget, I was also pressuring them with other requests, community stuff. So they have so much load that they were carrying, and they did that with a lot of dignity, with so much modesty. So I just want to say thank you for all your sacrifices. It did not go unnoticed. Thank you, Mr. President.
Are there any further comments before I hand it back over to Councilor Scott? Councilor Ballantyne.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. I do want to thank the administration tremendously. As my good colleague from Ward 5 said, the amount of time, at least certainly in the last 6 years, what I've seen, the amount of time that the administration put in, not only Annie Connor and Kushbu Weber and Michael Mastroboni, but Ed Bean and all the department heads in terms of the resolutions that we put forward and how reinvestment went back in to fund some very critical programs. That piece of it was just amazing. I would say I was blown away at some of the positively by some of the memos that came back to us with the amount of detail. It was obvious that the administrative staff that we have working for the city have thought about these issues a lot, that they could respond back so quickly and with so much detail. At the same time, and I think they've shown a tremendous amount of respect for us. I think at the same time that I would like to say that on the city council and is that we can do things better too, individually, and how we interact going forward with the administration, and show as though people might have been tired, but I do think if we're looking at this holistically, that the council did demonstrate at times a little bit of testiness to the administration. And I think that as we move forward, we can also reflect a little bit on our part on how respectful we all also are to staff who are put before us, who are asked to be responsive and very quickly, addressing the concerns that we feel as elected officials are necessary in our community. So thank you to everybody, and I look forward to next year's process.
Is there any further comment? Hearing no further comment, Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I'd like to thank my colleagues for the accolades. And I'd also like to just emphasize a few points that were made. We are coming out of this crisis, coming out of this year of this crisis in such an incredible position, in no small measure due to the work of Director Bean and his management of the city's finances through crisis before this and through the good times as well as credit due to our mayor's budgeting practices in prior years that have led us to be ready to absorb some of the shocks of this situation. But I do want to acknowledge that this is a groundbreaking year in terms of the collaboration, and that is due in no small part to our president, who addressed in his inaugural speech a different way of approaching budgeting and placed the confidence in me to put me as the chair of finance to try to carry out that vision. Now, obviously, that went a little bit off the rails with what happened in terms of the global pandemic. But that positioning that started in the first days of January, I think, put us in a very good position to work collaboratively in a crisis. And I hope it's a model that we'll continue to see as we go forward. Someone mentioned the resolutions of past years. I have the resolutions from last year that were made at the conclusion of the budget. And as I look at them, not a single one were addressed. Some of them are still open items before us that the council is working on and seeking to work on with the administration. And so the night and day difference with what has been done this year and the way the administration has come to the table and worked with the city council, I think is a high water mark in terms of mutual respect and the importance of both the executive and the legislative branch of our local government here. So yeah, thank you to everybody involved, and I look forward to continuing to grow a collaborative and respectful partnership here. So with that, Mr. Chair, I would move to accept the item. Pardon, Mr. President.
Councilor Scott moves to approve the item. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I would like to comment just very quickly, because I do appreciate the hard work of everyone in the city, from the chair who took this challenge on, as well as all the city staff who I know have spent a lot of sleepless nights just trying to make sure people have jobs and will be able to feed their families and are protected. So I really appreciate that. I appreciate the committee's work for really being the focus on this and having a lot of long hours while we watched. And I watched most of the meetings. And as always, I'm very happy to have colleagues who really get into the dirt of it and find the issues at hand, make cuts where they see appropriate, but also make sure that we have a functioning government. I'll tell you, though, it's funny, Councilor Scott mentions the inaugural address. High standards on that day going into this year. And then when COVID came, I have to admit that I had incredibly low standards going into this budget season. Is make sure people have jobs, make sure our government is functioning. And even with other crises, with social unrest and national issues being addressed on a local scale, we managed to get through that. And we also didn't rush it either. I know a lot of people wanted us to get it done in June, and we just kind of all knew that wasn't going to happen. So we didn't rush it, but we also got it done in a reasonable manner. And I really appreciate everybody for working hard and making sure that. I'm also glad that people seem pretty happy with the regular committee meetings instead of the whole. I'd like to try that again next year. The only downside was I feel like we could have got more done in other committees while finance was working, but we were dealing with COVID. We were dealing with a lot of crises going on, and as Councilor Davis pointed out to me, during the First of the Nation ordinance to recognize polyamorous relationships, and also to get on the same page as other cities in terms of recognizing domestic partnerships. So I think this is something to work with next year. I thank everybody for their time, especially the city staff who really worked overtime to make this happen. I think you all deserve a really nice break. We deserve a break too, but we're going to do this one for you. So Councilor Scott moves to approve. Seeing no discussion, please call the roll, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, there's a roll call vote on agenda item number 23, which is the fiscal year 2021 budget. On that item, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted in favor. The budget has been approved.
All right, do we have any other motions before we move to the severed items? Councilor Scott?
I just simply move to discharge 18 items from committee, the list of which our city clerk has, which are all items that need action by the city council in order to appropriate funds.
All right, Councilor Scott moves to take up said discharge items. Any discussion? Hearing none, we need a roll call vote to discharge those items. Please call the roll.
On discharging those items, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors are in agreement. Those items have now been discharged from the Finance Committee.
Okay, so we got a number of items to discuss here. What I'd like to do is have the item read, have discussion. If there's no objections, we will lay it on the table and take them all up as one vote. But if there are any objections to any of the items, please let me know and we'll make sure to take that item up separately. Does that work for you, Mr. Clerk?
That sounds good to me, Mr. President.
All right, please, Councilor Struzzo, you have a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. So would that mean that on the table, when would you decide what committee some of the orders would go to?
Well, these ones are going to be financial matters that I hope we vote on tonight. So they won't be referred to committee, but then when we get to the regular order of business, we can discuss where things go in committee.
Okay, thank you.
Any further comments? Hearing none, please read the first item, Mr. Clerk.
The first item is item number 210317, which appropriates $5,253,206 from the free cash to reduce the fiscal year 2021 tax levy.
Any discussion on this item? Hearing no discussion, this item will be laid on the table. And everyone, if you're not speaking, please mute your camera, your mic. And this item's laid on the table. Next item, please.
Next, we have item number 210316, requesting approval of an amendment to ordinances 2-322 and 2-323 regarding non-union salary ranges and position titles.
Any discussion on this item?
Mr. President?
Councilor Rossetti.
Thank you. I did read the document. I don't believe this was ever brought to our attention until this evening. Were any of my colleagues aware that the vote of the budget called with it adjustment of these non-union wages?
I believe this is the paraprofessionals contract. Is that correct, Mr. Long?
No, Mr. President, this was, I'm not the best to speak about it. It was not a general wage increase. There was an addition of a new step for the most senior employees, and there were a couple of positions that have been added this year, and those were rolled in to the ordinance because all the positions, non-union positions, are now appear in municipal ordinance.
Councilor Scott, do you have a comment?
Yeah, so this roster has been in committee for some time, but was not brought for discussion specifically in committee. It is basically, as expressed, it's the addition of an additional top-end step, which would effectuate pay raise for the longest tenured employees in those. But I would defer to Mr. Mastrobuoni for an explanation of how many employees are currently affected by the addition of that 18th step.
Mr. Mastrobuoni.
Mr. President, thank you. Actually, no employees are affected by an increase in the top step. As you know, as we've discussed, this ordinance only affects non-union employees, and non-union employees are not receiving any merit increases for fiscal 21 as of right now. So what happens is every other year we add an additional step to the scale in order to keep it active, keep it balanced, as well as I believe every other year we start hiring at an additional step. And this is to keep the salary scale relative to what's going on in the rest of the world. I think what you're seeing here is the add-on of that additional step, as well as some title changes. So effectively nothing of huge significance for fiscal 21.
All right, Councilor Rossetti, do you have any more questions? Are you satisfied, or would you like to take this item up separately?
No, sir, if may I ask one other question through you to Mr. Mastrobuoni. So this is more or less administrative language change, and the additional funds that go with the new lines really will not be happening in fiscal year 21?
That's fair to say. I believe through you, Mr. President, that the new highest step is step 18. Nobody will be on that step. And nobody's moving up steps this year anyway.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. Are you all set, Councilor Rossetti? On the table and vote for approval later?
Yes, sir.
Okay, this item is laid on the table. This item is laid on the table. Next item.
Mr. President, this item is an outlier in that it's an ordinance. It has not yet been approved or enrolled or ordained. I would recommend that this one be dealt with now with those 3 votes, separate and apart from the other financial items.
Okay, so we'll take this item up right now. Any discussion? Councilor Rossetti moves to approve. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, so we're doing approval, enrollment, and ordainment?
That's correct, in 3 separate votes.
All right, please call the roll for approval.
On approval, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors in favor of approval of that item.
On enrollment, please call the roll.
On enrollment, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Again, Mr. President, all 11 councilors in favor of enrollment.
On ordainment.
On ordainment, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, with all 11 councilors voting in favor, that amendment has now been ordained.
Any other motions before we move back to the discharge items? Hearing none, please read the next item, Mr. Clerk.
Next item is item 210310, which requests an appropriation of $813,707 to fund the fiscal year 21 Veteran Memorials Ice Rink Enterprise budget.
Discussion on this item. Hearing no discussion, the item is laid on the table for approval.
Next is 210313, which requests the appropriation of $155,692 to fund the fiscal year 21 Dillboy Enterprise Fund budget.
Discussion? Hearing no discussion, the item is laid on the table.
Next is 210314, which requests the appropriation of $17,500 from the Dillboy Enterprise Fund retained earnings account in order to subsidize that fiscal year 21 Dillboy Enterprise Fund budget.
Discussion? Hearing no discussion, the item is laid on the table.
210311 is a request for the appropriation of $560,628 to fund the fiscal year on Kennedy School Pool Enterprise Fund budget.
Discussion? Hearing no discussion, the item is laid on the table.
210312 is a request for the appropriation of $348,791 for the fiscal year 21 Cable Television PEG Access Fund budget.
Discussion? Hearing none, the item is laid on the table.
Next is 210309, which requesting to appropriate or reserve $2,192,190 in estimated FY21 CPA revenues for CPA projects and expenses.
Discussion? Hearing none, the item is laid on the table.
Next is item number 210326, which is a request to approve the creation of a racial and social justice fund.
Discussion. Hearing no discussion, this item is laid on the table.
Next is a request for the appropriation of $250,000 from free cash to that racial and social justice fund.
Discussion. Hearing no discussion, the item is laid on the table.
210-325 is requesting the approval for the creation of the COVID-19 stabilization fund.
Discussion. Hearing no discussion, the item is laid on the table.
210-318 is requesting the appropriation of $3 million from the fund from free cash to that COVID-19 stabilization fund.
Discussion. Hearing no discussion, the item is laid on the table.
210-320 requests the appropriation of $1 million from free cash to the Facility Construction and Renovation Stabilization Fund.
Discussion. Hearing none, the item is laid on the table.
210-321 is requesting the appropriation of $1 million from unreserved fund balance free cash to the Green Line Extension Stabilization Fund.
Discussion. Hearing none, the item is laid on the table.
210-322 requests the appropriation of $1 million from free cash to the Capital Project Stabilization Fund.
Discussion. Hearing none, this item is laid on the table.
210-315 is a request to accept the Federal Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security Act grant of $7,191,135.
Discussion. Hearing none, the item is laid on the table.
210-324 is a request to accept the CARES Act supplemental grant of $1,493,384 in CDBG funds and $750,831 in ESG funds with no new match required from HUD so that SPCD can prepare for and respond to the impacts of COVID-19.
Discussion. Hearing none, the item is laid on the table.
Mr. President, that brings us to the last item, which is a bonus item that does not appear on the table you have in front of you. This is the original appropriation that is being discharged to the Finance Committee, the original appropriation of the mayor a month ago, requesting the appropriation of $246 million in change for the fiscal year 21 general fund operating budget. This sole item is the goal would be to place this on file at this point.
Any discussion? Councilor Scott moves to place on file. Any further discussion? Hearing none, this item is laid on the table and placed on file. All right, so we all set there, Mr. Clerk?
Mr. President, this might be a good time to move for a vote on all of those discharged items.
Yes, indeed. Let's take all the laid on the table items that weren't identified to remain laid on the table and take a roll call vote. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
This is a roll call vote on those 18 items, 17 of which are recommended for approval and one is recommended for placing on file. On that motion, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, a unanimous vote, 11 councilors in favor of approving 17 of those items and placing the original budget submission on file.
All right, the budget has been approved. Everyone gets to keep their jobs. Let's take item number 24, Mr. Clerk.
Correct, Mr. President. Item number 24 is a request of the mayor requesting the appropriation of $521,242 from the Salary and Wage Stabilization Fund to the school department personal services other lump sum benefits account in order to fund the first year of the collective bargaining agreement with the paraprofessionals.
Discussion. Hearing none, Councilor Scott says woo, and he moves to approve. Let's lay this on the table for now and take up 25.
Item 25 is a request of the mayor requesting the appropriation of $70,200 from the Capital Stabilization Fund to reconstruct the City Hall fire escape.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, Councilor Scott moves to approve. Let's take this and the previous item and do a roll call vote.
Frank, this is a roll call vote on the approval of those two agenda items 24 and 25. On that motion, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors in favor. Those two items have been approved.
All right, now unless anyone else wants to take an item out of order, we'll return to the regular order of business. Mr. Clerk, please read the next item.
Mr. President, returning to the regular order of business, we move to item number 6, which is an order submitted by Councilor Strezzo, the Director of Inspectional Services, report to the Housing and Community Development Committee, its implementation plans for the fiscal 2019 Tenant Notification Act.
Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Clerk, could we go back to order number 5? I think that was skipped.
Yes, my apologies. I thought I just read number 5.
No, you read number 6.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Item number 5 is an order submitted by Councilor Strezzo, the Director of Inspectional Services, report to the Housing and Community Development Committee, its implementation plans for the 2019 Tenant Notification Act.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Clerk. So the Tenant Notification Act went into effect December 26th last year, and what it does for our viewers is that it explains the rights of tenants and landlords and foreclosing owners must provide a rights document to and resources to documents to tenants that are served with eviction notices. And as we are seeing the eviction moratorium about to end next month, I would like the Director of Inspectional Services to provide, explain the plans, because all fines that are found that reported that landlords are not providing this information to tenants is supposed to be going through ISD. And I'd like to see what the plans for that are. That's all I have to say.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, this item would be laid on the table for approval and referred to the Housing Community Development Committee. And then we'll take up 5 again. What was that, 5 or 6 we just did? Let's do, not item 6 now, which has already been read.
Item 6 is an order submitted by Councilor Strezzo, the Directors of SPCD, Housing Stability and Inspectional Services, discussed with the Housing and Community Development Committee the anticipated impact and possible responses when the mass eviction moratorium expires on August 18th.
Again, we're looking, Mr. President.
Oh, you got it, go ahead.
Thank you. Again, we're looking at some massive displacements about to happen, and how this will affect us in Somerville needs to be examined by all departments don't know what to expect, and heard the numbers over and over again. 67% of residents that are going to be evicted have children present in the home. So this order will discuss and hopefully, I'm asking that, yeah, okay, no, it says it all here. The rest is explanatory. That's all, Mr. President.
Sorry, communicating with the clerk. Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, this item will be laid on the table for approval and referred to the Housing Community Development Committee. Next item.
Item number 7 is a order submitted by Councilor for Inspection Services communicate with the community via email or mail or other means its 2020 plan for combating rat infestations, including monthly updates during peak infestation periods and quarterly updates otherwise.
Councilor Strezzo.
Rats. I think it could be useful, and for the Director of Inspectional Services to make communications regularly, because I think a lot of residents are left in the dark with what services are being done. And I think that more communication can only be better.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, this item will be laid on the table for approval and referred to the Rodent Committee. Next item.
Number 8 is an order submitted by Councilor Strezzo and Councilor Niedergang that the Director provide a demographic breakdown of employees in the E911, fire alarm, and constituent services departments.
Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you, Mr. President. So during the budget hearings, we heard Councilor Niedergang brought up the fact that there is a discrepancy in pay, a suspected discrepancy in pay of the E911 telephone operators, making between $50,000 to $56,000 annually, to the fire alarm operators that make annually $75,000 to about $85,000 a year. So I found that interesting, and I wanted to see I think we should have a demographic breakdown of, is this a gender issue? From what Councilor Niedergang said at the meeting, that most of the operators at the E911 center are female, and most of the operators of the fire alarm department are male. Is that a gender issue? Let's see what the demographics say, and let's throw 311 in for good measure. Mr. President, if this does get referred to committee, I am kindly requesting to see this is a community service issue, that it could be referred to Housing and Community Development.
That's fine by me. And on the item, Councilor Niedergang.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just want to thank Councilor Strezzo for taking the lead on this and say that I would like us to get this information in writing and certainly a discussion of it in committee. Thank you.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Thank you. I would like to sign on to that. Thank you.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, the item is laid on the table. Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just for the recognition, I just would like to point out this is one of the items that was a subject of last year's end of budget resolution. So I appreciate Councilor Strezzo's taking up the mantle of that motion that was made by Councilor Hirsch, I believe, last year. So this is, it remains an issue, and I'm glad that we are going to be focusing on it when we return from recess. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, the item is laid on the table for approval and referred to the Housing Community Development Committee. Next item.
Item number 9 is a communication submitted by Councilor Strezzo reporting on the Children's Cabinet meeting that was held on June 9th.
Councilor Strezzo.
Mr. President, if I certainly don't want to, I'm happy to yield to Councilor Rossetti if she'd like to go ahead of me on this, and then to your request. I don't want it to be back to back to back to back. Council Struzzer show.
I think that's fine, Council Struzzo. You can proceed.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I just wanted to update the board on the community cabinet meeting, which in the budget hearings, I think it went through. Yes, it went through one of the departments, and some of the councilors were not aware of it because it is kind of its own little discrete little committee, and it's called the community cabinet, but it's also the children, and discusses how effectively to serve the educational all-encompassing needs of children in Somerville. And I've been in 2 meetings and have learned an intense amount of information along the way. Some of the points that I'd love to bring forward to the council's attention is that the Somerville Partnership for Young Children presented a report that is available. I'm hoping that our clerk it can be submitted for review, and talked a little bit about and that Somerville Partnership for Young Children talked about, now that we have our centers open and early childhood education centers open. I'm going to be reporting on the past 2 meetings because I passed the first report on to let the budget process go through. And so I'm reporting on 2 meetings. So in the first meeting I attended, we talked about how the state regulations for how early childhood centers were supposed to open was going to cause a huge problem and a huge budget deficit for these daycares and childcare centers that haven't been open for months, incurring this debt, and then also now have to take on added expenses of state procedures, by the way that the state has not offered any form of compensation or help to help address these new regulations. So the SPYC, Somerville Partnership for Young Children, reported that they are providing for their partners, that several of their partners' early education program are open, but they've spent about for 2 to 3 months of PPE and gloves and hand sanitizer, bleach. It cost them between $10,000 and $12,000 for 2 to 3 months worth of materials that's ordered in bulk. And also they talked about how useful tuition assistance is for struggling families, and that only 20 families receive that. But of course, it's a massive help for those 20 families that receive it. Talked about the focus. Mary Skipper presented talked about that the plan for reopening schools is not yet available, and that the state has advised that to prepare 3 plans, and that might be available early August. And a focus on the student populations needs focus on some of the more vulnerable students that the school district has decided may need even extra attention, the special ed department, ASD students, and medically fragile children. And working on getting the classroom setting at between 3 feet and 6 feet of desks versus full remote. Ellen Schachter presented, talking about the massive onslaught of evictions that are about to happen next month, and ways that the committee can help and spread the word to give as much information and help as much as possible. And Immigrant Services presented some information as well, that they have been sharing a database, cross-referencing with Office of Housing Stability. So when people calling to see if their application for OHS Office of Housing Stability, if they need, if there's a language barrier and Immigrant Services takes on that call, they can cross-reference it through the database and say, oh, okay, well, your application was reviewed. You should receive a response in a couple of days or a week or something, which is tremendously helpful. And Office of Housing Stability stated that they are 3 weeks behind in processing applications at this point. That's all I would like to, say at this very moment. In respect of time, I offer this to be accepted for.
Any discussion on the communication? Hearing no discussion, this item will be laid on the table and placed on file.
Thank you, Mr.
Next
President.
item.
Item number 10 is communication submitted by Councilor Rossetti reporting on the high school building committee meeting that was held on July 13th.
Councilor Rossetti.
Thank you, sir. Through you to my colleagues. The meeting was lengthy. I apologize for meeting public health and public safety, but we had really deep discussion about the timeline for this project. As we know, COVID affects the original timeline. So as it appears now, phase 2 of the project probably is, which is most of the educational aspect of the building itself, hopes to be completed perhaps by mid-November. What does that mean for the students and staff moving into the new building? It's still unknown. It might be early December. It very well might not be until early January after the holiday break. The superintendent has is still awaiting direction from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education about what education will look like. If there is class going in the buildings, spacing will need to occur, of course, which wasn't factored in at the start out of the buildup of this school. So there's still an unknown, and we will continue to direct and discuss that at our next meeting. We should have more of a target on that. I am discouraged, and I wanted to share with my colleagues that I learned that some of the delay in the timeline sits in the hands of Eversource. It was mentioned during the meeting by Suffolk Construction that they're having problems getting response from Eversource. The permanent power is really an issue for Suffolk right now. You know, as an example, there are conduits on the site which is preventing work. As we all know, Capital Projects, Rich Raish serves on this committee, and he was present for the meeting. And he has been trying to reach out to Eversource. I offered that the council would do what they had to do, and I thought back when Councilor Scott pushed us for what was not happening in Union Square because of Eversource's delay. I checked with John Long, and of course we don't have any hearings tonight of all nights. So I can't make it an issue like I wanted to, and we're going to be in summer hiatus. But what I have done is I have touched base with Rich Raish late this afternoon. He did get a contact. It's the engineering section of Eversource that is the problem right now with the holdup. So Director Raish assured me that he did speak again with Eversource today, was waiting for a call back. I suggested to Director Raish that he please reach out to me. I want to stay in close contact with him on this. And I'm hoping that you, my colleagues, will give me the authority to do what I need to do during our summer hiatus, as I did with the letter I sent to the governor without asking you all to send that, because this timeline for the project is really an issue. I do want the public to know that Chairman Parentozzi suggested that we should be doing a filmed tour of the inside of the building as it is now, and in the next couple of weeks perhaps that will happen. Superintendent Skipper and Headmaster Logan being for that, so that the public can see what's going on inside, and it is very exciting. We are always given slide updates, and it's moving along very well. The contingency line, which I had concern about after our last meeting, is back up to $436,185 as a result of change orders, both positive and negative for us, and the city presenting the Central Hill, some of the monies from the Central Hill project back into the high school's project budget. so that we have a little bit of a better contingency line now than I reported out from our last meeting. And I'm also thrilled to share with you that I told you at the last meeting that I had reached out to our state delegation about getting monies to the School Building Assistance Authority to help Somerville and other school projects who are in real jeopardy of their contingency lines because of the COVID costs. Right now, for the high school, our COVID-related costs are running $40,000 a month since the COVID. So Senator Jalen did let myself and the mayor's office and Mr. Raish know recently that she was successful in the Senate vote, getting two amendments, Amendment 96 and 99, to the proposal that the governor had before them as it related to the expenditure of the COVID monies that he still has. What those two amendments are would give Somerville $250,000 towards their contingency line to assist with the COVID monies, and $2.5 million to go to the School Building Assistance Authority for their oversight of assisting school in their projects as it relates to COVID. Through the reach out of the Mass Association of School Committees and School Superintendents, I've been told that 12 other communities are also requesting same, and I think that number is growing, so I am hopeful that that money will become real and that will assist us in our project. Our next meeting will be August 17th. Thank you, Mr. President.
On the communication, Councilor Davis.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. With regard to Councilor Rossetti's request regarding communication with Eversource, I'd like to move to authorize Councilor Rossetti to give him help.
On the motion. Hearing no discussion. John, I'm sure you got that marked down. Any further discussion on this communication? Hearing none, the item is laid on the table to be placed.
Mr. President,
Councilor White.
thank you. I'm sorry, I have a hard time unmuting myself. My fingers aren't what they used to be as far as speed, but one of the things we may consider is that if Eversource is not cooperating and they need any type of interim permits during the summer before we meet again, basically to indicate to them that we will not be inclined to approve any of those until this issue is resolved. So this way, this is one way to hit them. So I'm wondering if the best approach would be to either have the city clerk or for me to contact Jackie Duffy and indicate that that is the situation. I'm just wondering for the thoughts of the president on that.
That sounds excellent to me, Councilor White. Do you have anyone else have a comment on this? All right, here no comment. Please give them hell, Councilor White.
All righty, thank you.
Mr. President, I appreciate it.
Councilor Rossetti.
So I just wanted to say through you to, I just wanted to say through you to the Chair of License and Permits, thank you very much. You, myself, Rich Raish, John Long, we can all chat offline, but that suggestion is spot on. So I totally support it. I want to put it in the form of a motion so that the clerk has that to lean on.
Okay, I don't think we need a motion for Councilor White to take this upon himself. But if someone wants to make a motion, please feel free. Hearing no discussion, this communication is laid on the table to be placed on file. And let's take all the items that are laid on the table up for a roll call vote.
Very good, Mr. President. This is a roll call vote on the approval of items 5, 6, 7, and 8, and then place 9 and 10 on file. On that motion, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti. Councilor Rossetti,
Yes.
and Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors are in favor. That motion has been approved.
Very good. Next item.
Next item is item number 11, which is a resolution submitted by Councilor Scott, Ballantyne, Klingon, and Davis, supporting the People's Justice Guarantee.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I recognize it's still in front of us, and in the absence of more flowery language, I just want to emphasize that this work in support of the goals of the People's Justice Guarantee will be going on during our recess as the City Council moves forward with our processes, and I look forward to having some progress to report when we return to our regularly scheduled meetings, and hopefully to have some strong language that we can all vote to approve. Thank you.
All right, Councilor Strezzer would like to sign on, and this item will be laid on the table with no vote taken. Councilor Ballantyne, let's take up item number 12.
Did you just ask me to read number 12, Mr. President?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Item number 12 is a resolution submitted by Councilor Ballantyne that the mayor, the chief of police, the director of health and human services discussed with this council at its June 11th meeting their declaration of systemic racism as a public safety and health emergency.
All right, unless there's any discussion on this item will be laid on the table with no vote taken. And no discussion, the item is laid on the table.
Number 13 is a report of committee on confirmation of appointments and personnel matters, which met on July 9th.
Councilor Rossetti.
Thank you, Mr. President. All members were in attendance for the meeting. We took up 3 items, the first being the requesting the confirmation of the appointment of Christine Lindgren to the Licensing Commission. Clerk Lawn introduced the candidate to us and reminded us that this commission only has 3 voting members, and currently there is 1 vacancy. And given the elevated need for prompt work as it processes licenses for outdoor seating, it really was an urgency to fill that 3rd spot. Ms. Lindgren came very well recommended. She currently shared with us her experiences working at MassBio. And she's volunteered in the life science industry and was part of Somerville Garden Committee and active in the Powder House meetings process as well. She felt that it's been critical for the commission to accept public feedback. There was a lot of questioning from the committee of her application. Councilor Scott did share a concern with some of her responses as it related to a sense of delay and strongly controlling the locations of businesses that are already, in his opinion, that were already facing unfathomable difficulties. So on a motion to accept the recommendation of her appointment, 4 in favor and Councilor Scott was against, that motion did pass. We also had before us requested the confirmation of the appointment of Carla Lilvik as a trustee for the Board of Library Trustees. We had a wonderful discussion with her, and unanimously, the committee recommends her approval. And the last item was requesting the confirmation of the appointment of Robert McCarthy to the position of Deputy Fire Chief. He has been serving in the role of acting deputy since January. He's been serving on the fire department since 1996. He's also a member of the Mass Bar Association, and we learned that he's done a great deal of outreach work in the community pro bono. The reason this particular promotion came before us, there are a number of promotions in the fire department that the administration promised to be submitting by for our next meeting in August by a conversation that I had with the administration. This particular position, there was an exam coming up scheduled for July 21st. So we had this particular individual come before us now at this early hour. If the committee recommended him for approval, it would spare him having to worry about taking yet another exam. Councilor Scott did cite and reminded the committee and the administration of the historical case of Gorman versus the city of Somerville. He had concerns with the administration's process for bringing promotions to us. I vowed to have a meeting soon between myself, Councillor Scott, and the administration on the concerns of the process by the administration to bring promotions in the public safety venue to us. Further discussion, questions of the candidate were answered. He was unanimously approved and recommended for the position by this committee. I therefore present to the full council my report of July 9 and ask that it be accepted.
On the committee report, Councilor Scott.
Thank you for the recognition, Mr. President, and thank you to my colleague, the chair, for the thorough report. I just want to highlight that while I certainly have no issue with the candidate for fire promotion, my concern is the irregularity of the action of the administration with respect to what hires or promotions they bring forward at what time. Due to my tenure as 2 years in the chair of confirmation of appointments, I learned far more about civil service law than I would frankly ever expected to know. And my goal as chair was to establish straightforward and consistent procedures. And I applaud our current chair for her continuation of that legacy. However, I have great concern about the liability that the administration is opening us up to with further irregularities in hiring and promotion process. So that was my concern, and I thank the chair for continuing to follow up with me and the administration on where we're at with those promotions and how we can keep it clean. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the committee report? Hearing no discussion, this committee report will be laid on the table for acceptance later on today. Next item. Mr. Clerk, the next item.
I'm sorry, Mr. President, that brings us to item number 21, which is a report of the Committee on Licenses and Permits, which met on July 8th.
Councilor White.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee met with all members in attendance virtually on the 8th of July. The traditional pedestrian items that the committee deals with are set forth in the report. There was one item that was interesting, and that dealt with the order that this council previously authorized, giving the Licensing Commission the authority to license outdoor seating. Councilor Rossetti had raised the question, since the powers only went through November 1st, what happens to the entities that do receive licenses from the Licensing Commission? They do expire on November 1st, so I had requested that the city clerk send a notice to all folks who had been so licensed, letting them know that their license will expire on November 1st, and if they want to continue it for the months of the entire month of November and December, they should seek a permit, extending it to the city council, and also alerting them if they want to continue next year that they should also seek a permit from us. So that was essentially the matters discussed by the committee, and I would ask that the committee report be accepted as submitted.
Any discussion on the committee report? Hearing none, this item will be laid on the table for acceptance later today. Next item.
Number 22 is a report of the Committee on Public Health and Public Safety, which met as a committee of the whole on last night, July 13th.
Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Committee on Public Health and Public Safety did meet last evening. All members were present, with the exception of Councilor Rossetti, who, as she noted, was attending the meeting of the High School Building Committee. Briefly, the crux, as folks know, Somerville is not currently entering phase 3. That will happen next week, and we were advised that there will be additional guidelines, much as there were with earlier phases, that go above and beyond the state guidelines. So folks should stay tuned for that. I don't believe I saw anything released yet today. So It's at some point prior to or at the beginning of next week, there should be, assuming that phase 3 goes into effect in Somerville next week, that is still that is the current plan, although I guess, obviously keeping an eye on all the data. The other primary thing that we discussed, well, there was a number of items, but the thing that's worth mentioning is testing. There was a bit of discussion about testing and the fact that the wait time to get an appointment at CHA, which, for the record, has done a fantastic job. Somerville has really been a leader in providing free testing for Somerville residents. For a variety of reasons, not the least of which appear to be difficulty getting some of the reagents, some of the materials necessary to complete the testing, as well as perhaps some additional volume just due to CHA closing other locations. Where it used to be a day or two to get an appointment, it now is a week or more for folks to be able to get an appointment. So I want folks to be aware of that. If you don't, you're not getting a test through your primary care physician, plan ahead. You really got to plan ahead because it's not quite as readily available as it has been. Director Kress did note that the Commonwealth has introduced the Stop the Spread testing program, and there's a website link in the minutes for that information. But if you just look up the Stop the Spread testing program, there are a number, I believe 8 facilities around the Commonwealth. I think the closest to Somerville would be in Everett, but to Everett, Lawrence, Lowell, New Bedford, cities outside of Boston where there are free testing is available in a number of locations. So folks can take a look there too if they really do need to. And a number of those are also first come, first serve. The extent to which there's lines at those, I don't have that information. We know that there have been some pretty long lines locally at the urgent care clinics where even to go pay for tests. So just for folks to be aware of that. I know I wasn't aware of it and got a little surprised myself in trying to make an appointment for some testing coming up. So wanted folks to be aware that they really need to plan ahead and what resources are available. Other than that, the minutes are, as always, complete. And folks can take a look at those. We do not have another meeting scheduled for the moment. If things change significantly and we feel that it's appropriate, I'll communicate with the president about potentially having a meeting over the summer. But for right now, that's not the plan, and I hopefully don't anticipate that it will be. So, with that, I request that the minutes be approved as submitted.
Any discussion on the committee report? Hearing none, Councilor Davis moves for approval of the committee report. I will lay this item on the table, and now let's take up all committee reports off the table and do a roll call vote.
Mr. President, this is a roll call vote on item numbers 13, 21, and 22, the 3 committee reports that haven't yet been acted on. On that motion, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor
Yes.
McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted in favor. That motion has been approved. Those committee reports have been accepted.
All right, on the next item, Councilor White.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to waive the readings of items 27 through 39 and approve them this evening. The clerk assures me that they're all in order. If any of the councilors from the ward has a question, feel free to ask. Otherwise, I'd move to approve them this evening.
All right, Councilor White moves to waive the readings of said items and move for approval. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, let's call the roll.
Mr. President, this is on the approval of item numbers 27 through 39.
Mr. President,
Councilor White.
prior to taking the roll call, I'm also going to move to discharge an item from committee and basically place that on file. So I believe the motion to discharge would require a roll call vote, so you can put them all together.
Yes, okay, so we'll lay this vote on the table. Council White moves to discharge an item from committee. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, call the roll to discharge the item. And which item are we referring to?
It's item 208976.
All right, please call the roll to discharge that item.
On discharging that item, which is a grand location that's no longer in play, Councilor Klingon.
The clerk,
Yes.
I think in announcing the vote, you should also say it's the prior three. I mean, so the approval of the other licenses and permits that we just waived and approved, so it should all be combined.
Excellent idea. Excellent idea. So this will be then a roll call vote on the approval of item numbers 27 through 39 and the discharge of item number 208976, and then placing that item on file. On that motion, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted in favor. Those items have been, that motion has been approved.
Okay. Now, before we approve the other ones, let's take up the last items on the agenda before we do a roll call for everything. So we'll do item 40.
Yeah, item 40 is the communication, public communication of 113 citizens who had all submitted comments since the last city council meeting on the budget. Many more comments have been received on the fiscal year 21 budget proposal.
All right, this item will be laid on the table and placed on file.
Mr. President, I'm not aware of any other items except for some late items that have come in that need a vote.
I see a supplemental item number 41 from Councilor Ballantyne.
Oh, I'm sorry. Item number 41 has been withdrawn, was withdrawn earlier after the agenda was published.
All right, Councilor Ballantyne wishes to comment on it, though. Councilor Ballantyne, you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. President. Since it is written down there for everyone to see, I didn't want the public or my colleagues to think that it wasn't an important issue and it hasn't been addressed. In research back in 2018, it appears that through all the city clerk departments have made the necessary changes, and then going through the Park and Rec application, where that might also be an issue, has been taken care of, and who wants to identify their gender can do so in a few different ways. And then in reference to the school committee, there are some questions, but I think after talking to the chair of finance in the school committee, Mr. Andre Green, we're going to spend a little bit more time culling through some possible issues, but they're not saying that they're there. We just need a little bit more time to address it. So that's why I withdrew the amendment, so it could be more, the order, so it could be more refined for August if need be. Thank you.
All right, very good. So then we will do a roll call vote for the remaining items laid on the table.
That would be a roll call vote on placing item number 40 on file and then withdrawing item number 41, which now does require a roll call vote because it's been read into the record.
All right, and we already approved all the licenses and permits?
Yes.
Okay, on the two items.
On the two items, Councilor Klingon,
Yes.
Councilor Mba,
Yes.
Councilor White. Councilor White,
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne,
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo,
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang,
Yes.
Councilor Davis,
Yes.
Councilor Scott,
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen,
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti,
Yes.
and Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, that motion has been approved.
All right, do we have any late items?
Mr. President, there are a couple late items that have been submitted. The first is an order submitted by Councilor Klingon. The Directors of Engineering and Water and Sewer appear before this Council's Public Utilities and Public Works Committee to discuss short-term and long-term plans to address the multiple drainage issues, including the broken drain on Medford Street at School Street that caused by the underground Verizon utility box and the insufficient drainage system on Richdale Ave.
Councilor Klingon.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's pretty self-explanatory. There's multiple issues down there. I have residents with raw sewage in their basement continuously. I know it only affects a small number, but I think it's it's high time now to to prioritize this, especially since we're going to be doing so much development in Gilman Square. I think it's on a transit node. It's just as important of a transit node as Union Square and other transit spots. So I think I do plan on having these conversations and pushing the administration to take action on what has been going on for way too long.
All right, any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, the item is laid on the table for approval and submitted to the Public Utilities, Public Works Committee.
Next is a resolution submitted by Councilor Klingon that the administration and the City Council draft a joint letter to the constables that have been appointed by the mayor and approved by this council, urging those constables to turn down any requests for eviction assistance for the remainder of calendar year 2020.
Councilor Klingon.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's pretty self-explanatory. As we look for different strategies on how to combat this, what is going to be, quite a wave of evictions, I think it's our duty to at least do everything we can in our power. And I think that, a letter to urge these folks to not help to displace our residents after the current state we find ourselves in after this pandemic, is the least we can, one of the things that we can do in the toolbox. And we have a number of constables who do assist with those activities, and I hope that they will adhere to this council, and I'll be looking, in appointments and confirmations next time around, hoping that we have constables with empathy. And thank you.
All right, on the item, Councilor Strezzo.
Through you, Mr. President, to Councilor Klingon, what could I ask you? Where did the idea to present this or create this come from?
It came from my head through you to the president to you.
Okay, well, what do you anticipate the response would be? Do you think it will have any effect? Are other communities doing this? What approach would you take on this?
Sure, through the president. I'm actually not sure what. This isn't any authority that we have. This is basically a letter asking these folks who we appoint if they would not participate in any eviction. So I mean, it's pretty straightforward, self-explanatory, directly to these constables that we empower within our limited power here in the city. So I mean, essentially that's it.
Okay, I guess that's all I can ask about that, I suppose. I mean, it's intriguing, through you, Mr. President, to Councilor Klingon. I mean, it's intriguing. It's an intriguing idea. I just was hoping to get a little more. I hear what you're saying, but I guess I'm just intrigued. Okay, thank you, Mr. President. That's all I have to say.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, the item is laid on the table for approval.
Next, Mr. President, we have resolution submitted by Councilor Ballantyne and Councilor McLaughlin that the administration advise this council as soon as possible what oversight procedures they'll implement with Tufts University in light of learning that the university has invited all undergraduate students back for the fall 2020 semester.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is just the administration being able to sync their language with so there's a little bit of confusion among community members about what kind of oversight and protocol the administration is using in terms of Tufts, and wanting to have they want to have a clear understanding that the city is on board with Tufts University reopening plan. The city of Somerville has been very vocal on how to keep our community safe. How it's reopening small businesses, how we've delayed some openings in comparison to the rest of the state. And there is a clear will by the community to understand the oversight, the protocols, the processes and procedures, whether they are also being implemented in terms of Tufts University's decision to invite all its undergraduates back to school in the fall. Thank you.
Councilor Davis would like to sign on. Any discussion? Councilor Scott.
Yeah, I would also like to sign on. I thank the counselor for this, and quite frankly, Tufts announcement that they're bringing all the kids from all over the country and the world back to Somerville in light of our considerations of phase 3 starting on July 20th. Scares the hell out of me, so I'm glad we're talking about it. Thank you.
Any further discussion? There are none. This item will be laid on the table for approval, referred to the Public Health and Safety Committee, and let's send a copy to the mayor's office as well.
Very good.
Next item.
Mr. President, the next item and the last item is a communication from Councilor McLaughlin in his capacity as president, canceling the City Council's previously scheduled meetings of July 15, July 16, July 23, and August 13.
Well, I think everyone in the city has earned this. And again, thank you to the Finance Committee for working overtime this season. Thank you to all the city staff. I really think more than anything, like, if we didn't have a recess, it would have mean 4 or 5 more meetings for us, but it's a lot of work for the city staff as well. So I think it's important to have this break for them as well as for our own sanity. People can use it in any way they like. I already have a bunch of community meetings lined up, but that's all I got to say on that. Any discussion?
On that item, Mr. President.
Councilor White.
Thank you. Before you cancel special meetings, there first should be a motion to reconsider all financial items voted on this evening in the hopes that reconsideration fails.
Yes, I was just going to get to that. Thank you, Councilor White.
Okay.
So we'll lay this on the table for approval. Well, we'll just lay it on the table. And Councilor White moves to reconsider all financial items discussed tonight. Any discussion on the motion? So just so we're clear, now that we have more clarification, we're going to take a vote, yes or no, to reconsider, and then so people can vote yes or no there. and then we'll have a second vote to determine whether anyone wants to change their vote. So the first vote is just for the opportunity to reconsider. Any questions? There are none. Please call the roll to reconsider.
This is a roll call vote on the motion to reconsider all financial items. Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba. Councilor Mba. Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes, and Councilor Barr would like to be recorded as a yes.
Very good. Mr. President, 11 councilors have voted in favor of reconsideration. All financial items acted on this evening are now before this council once again.
Okay, so if people wish to change their votes now would be the time to do so. So no would mean keeping your vote the same. Yes would mean changing it. Please call the roll.
This is a vote on changing request. Do you want to change your vote on any of the financial items that have come before this council this evening? Councilor Klingon.
No.
Councilor Mba.
No.
Councilor White.
No.
Councilor Ballantyne.
No.
Councilor Strezzo.
Nope.
Councilor Niedergang.
No.
Councilor Davis.
Nope.
Councilor Scott.
Nope.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
No.
Councilor Rossetti.
No.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
No.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted against reconsidering the financial items. The reconsideration of financial items has been defeated.
Okay, so now let's take up our last items laid on the table and do a roll call vote.
Mr. President, there's a roll call vote on the approval of those 3 laid items and then placing your communication on file. On that motion, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba. Councilor Mba. Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yeah.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, 10 councilors have voted in favor of the motion. 1 is absent.
All right, do we have any other further items in front of us?
Mr. President, there are no further items before this council.
I say yes, Mr. President.
Councilor Barr would like to be recorded as a yes on the roll call vote.
Very good, then that was a unanimous vote.
All right, well, Councilor Klingon moves to adjourn. Any discussion before we adjourn for the recess? Everyone wants to go on break. Please call the roll, Mr. Clerk.
Here's a roll call vote on adjournment. Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, on adjournment, all 11 councilors have voted in favor.
Ladies and gentlemen, try to enjoy your summer. We'll see you all again soon. We are adjourned.